Welcome to cooking school. Grains are a nutritional staple that for much of the world provides the largest share of calories and nutrients. Our first recipe is a classic mushroom barley soup. My mom's recipe that uses a very flavorful dried mushroom. Then Couscous Royale, a fantastic recipe using lots of fresh vegetables and served with a spicy condiment called harissa. And finally, a southern favorite, white grits with sharp cheddar cheese served with a unique twist that I think you're going to love. Barley is a hearty grain dating back to the Stone Age, and it's used in dishes from cereals to breads to soups. Today's recipe for mushroom barley soup comes from my mother, who made hers with borowik mushrooms. These are the mushrooms that come from Poland. Women actually wear them around their necks when they're dried. They are worth their weight in gold. And the soup also has a rich beef stock and tender barley. The barley grains have been rinsed well, and we're going to cook them in water, boil them until they're tender. Bring the water to a boil, then reduce to a simmer, and cook the barley for approximately 1 hour until it's plump and not quite split open. These borowiki mushrooms are large, round, ranging from tan to brown, and these are just amazingly flavorful mushrooms. And they are dried very assiduously, and when someone wants to use one, you just soak them in warm water. You can use porcini mushrooms, you can use dried cep. These are sort of like dried cep, and you can also use dried shiitake mushrooms. Borowikis are one of the very few wild mushrooms that may be eaten raw. So by pre-soaking these, they will become plump and tender. Look how different they are. Here's a similar size. Look how they swell. It's very interesting, but very important to soak them overnight so they become tender enough to cut. And my mother used to just slice them, and that's what we're going to do, using them in the soup. Now, to make these even more tender, we are going to cook them for about 40 minutes on a low simmer in the soaking liquid. And then we can start making our soup. To prepare the soup, we're going to add some other mushrooms. These are just white button mushrooms, 6 ounces, that I'm going to cook slowly in 3 tablespoons of butter. These mushrooms will take on a very nice flavor when slowly cooked like this in butter, and we'll also get a nice nutty brown color. I love how these cook down. And the Polish mushrooms that have simmered, look how beautiful they are. They are fantastic. So you just soak these overnight, as I showed you, then simmer for 45 minutes, and then chop or slice, whichever you prefer. So now just slice and dice your mushrooms. Slice them one direction and then the other direction. They actually resemble well-cooked beef liver. They're that kind of texture. They are fragrant and utterly delicious, and they will add a lot of character to this mushroom barley soup. This is 1 ounce of dried Polish mushrooms. And there are some good sources for the dried Polish mushrooms, but remember, they are expensive. So you see how the mushrooms cook down, and they are already taking on a beautiful golden color. Drain your barley, and when I drain into a sink, I turn on my cold water. I just don't like boiling liquid going down the drain in great quantities. I'm not going to rinse the barley, but I am going to rinse the pan out a little bit just so I don't lose any grains. And shake. That is well-cooked barley. You see how the grains are still individual, but they have opened up a little tiny bit. That is exactly what we want with our barley. The mushrooms are almost the right color. You can add a little bit of salt and pepper to your mushrooms. And I find that the longer you cook them, the more they resemble the real Polish dried mushrooms. And have ready 7 cups of beef stock, the reserved liquid from the strained Polish mushrooms. Okay, so the mushrooms I think are beautiful. Add 2 ribs of celery, finely diced. 2 carrots, peeled and finely diced. Let these cook with your browned mushrooms. Add your liquid, Polish mushroom liquid, your beef stock, and now your dried mushrooms. Every single speck. We want this very, very hot, and we're going to add our barley. Now remember that barley releases starch as it cooks, even after it's cooked for an hour, and it will give this soup a little additional body. Now before I do the last Martha Stewart, my mom's final touches to the soup, I just want to remind you of 2 things. When buying grains, buy them in small quantities, since they go quickly rancid and cause stale aromas and bitterness. And also when making this particular soup, use a blonde, a light colored beef stock. Look how pretty all those ingredients look. And they taste really good too. So now the final step. 2 tablespoons or 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour into, Mom always used a little bit more sour cream than I thought she should, so this is 3/4 of a cup of sour cream. And the flour gets incorporated into the sour cream. It makes its own little sour cream roux. It's the thickening for the soup. And now use a ladle and put some of the hot broth right into the roux. Adding the flour prevents the sour cream from separating in the soup. It's a very clever thing to do. In Louisiana, you would cook the flour in butter first and add the sour cream at the end. But this is just a simple precautionary step to keep that soup creamy. Okay, so there. Now this goes right back into the soup. And just over low heat, stir in your sour cream. In Polish households, sour cream is just like a staple. We always had sour cream. Nowadays, I have to make a special trip to the grocery store to get the sour cream. It's just not a regular day in, day out ingredient. But look how pretty the soup looks. And Mom insisted that soup be served piping hot and have a bowl of fresh dill fronds chopped, ready to serve. And here is a soup that is perfect for a chilly day. Couscous is considered a wheat grain, but it's similar to pasta since it's made from tiny granules of semolina flour, which come from the grain or heart of the durum wheat. This is what couscous looks like, tiny little grain-like granules. What I like most about couscous is that it absorbs flavors beautifully, and what a better way to showcase it than Couscous Royale. Let me show you how we make Couscous Royale. And you start with 1 onion and 2 tablespoons of olive oil in a deep saucepan. What we're doing is making a broth. 2 cloves of garlic, finely minced. and 2 carrots peeled and cut into inch pieces. And stir this over medium heat until the vegetables exude moisture and the onions become a little bit translucent. Add 3 tomatoes cut up. This vegetable broth is going to cook for 1 hour. So add all the ingredients, a teaspoon of black pepper, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 teaspoons of harissa, which is a very spicy pimento-based condiment, 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. You can use the kind of paste that comes in a can, or more efficiently and more economically, the kind of paste that comes in a tube. 1 teaspoon of beautiful fresh paprika. I'm always concerned that spices get old and stale. Paprika is one of the first spices to get stale, so always test it. A pinch of saffron. Stir with a wooden spoon, and that fragrance is so good. Everything in this pot is common to Moroccan cuisine. Cook the spices just a little bit until you add 5 cups of water. 1 cinnamon stick, and some sprigs of parsley and thyme. Bring to a boil, reduce the heat, and cook 1 hour. So now to cook the vegetables. All of these vegetables have already been blanched. I'm just about to now blanch these green patty pans. Put about a tablespoon of salt in a pot of boiling water, and then just slip the patty pans into the water. These will come to a boil, and you'll cook just until tender to the point of a knife. Here's our broth. It is cooked for 1 hour. This gets strained right into a large pot. This large pot will enable you to put all the vegetables in the strained broth. Press all the liquid out of the vegetables. I love this broth. It is the liquids absorbed by the couscous in this wonderful dish called Couscous Royale. I'm going to actually slide the vegetables right into the broth now. Some yellow patty pans, 3 parsnips. These are like 6-inch parsnips cut in half. 4 turnips. You can also use rutabagas if you cut the pieces small enough and cook them long enough. 1 pound of carrots. 1 cup of beautiful pearl onions. And I'll just scoop out the patty pans and add them for color and texture and taste to the rest of the vegetables. So we're going to now heat this up and cook the couscous. In 2 1/4 cups of water, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/4 cup of golden raisins, about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. The olive oil really helps keep the granules separate, and 2 cups of couscous. Now stir as you add the couscous. Just bring it to a boil, turn off the heat, cover the pot with cheesecloth. This helps keep the moisture in, and cover with a tight-fitting lid for 5 minutes. Now, couscous refers to the special dish in which couscous is traditionally steamed, called a couscousier. This is just a regular old pot, which works almost as well. I have some nice garnishes and condiments for couscous. Parsley, it's finely chopped, or coriander, harissa, and preserved lemon, which you can make. It's just lemons preserved in coarse salt for, at least 3 weeks or longer. Very nice, finely chopped like that, and traditional to serve with couscous. So 5 minutes is up. Let's see if our couscous has absorbed all the liquid. Oh, it looks beautiful. And just lightly fluff it with a fork. This is exactly what you want couscous to look like. Each grain separate. Now, unlike pasta, couscous should never be boiled. All you want to do is reconstitute it with hot water and steam it. Now, this is a nice bowl for the Couscous Royale. And I like to mound it up into a point like this. And then, if you like, you can take some of the vegetables, like the carrots, for example. You can do this with your fingers or a pair of tongs, but the carrots look very pretty placed like this. Maybe some of these lovely patty pan squash pressed into the couscous. Work quickly because you do not want this to get cold. You want to serve it when it is hot. And maybe a beautiful green patty pan on the top, like that. And now a little bit of the broth just around the outside of the couscous. And you can put the onions, more of the green patty pans, pieces of the turnip. It's like making a little bit of a mosaic. And then on a platter, you can put the rest of the vegetables. I'm going to take out some of the broth and put it in a little gravy dish. This will be nice for individual servings. So now gently lift out your vegetables. The carrots, the parsnips, the turnips, and they are a spectacular color. That saffron really does the trick. This richly flavored and adorned couscous makes quite the presentation, don't you think? And it tastes even better than it looks. You don't have to be a Southerner, I found out, to enjoy grits. Now becoming more popular around the country and in top restaurants, this Southern staple is enjoyed in numerous forms. Today, we have a very simple recipe that features smooth, creamy grits topped with broiled tomatoes and bubbling cheddar cheese, and if you like, some crispy bacon. And I'm just slicing 2 tomatoes. I'm making 6 ramekins with this recipe. 6 individual servings. And these tomatoes, I'm going to just put under the broiler to get cooked. I love broiled tomatoes and make them even tastier by putting a little bit of pepper on top, a little bit of salt, and a drizzle of olive oil. Just a teeny, teeny bit of olive oil. And these will cook slowly under a hot broiler. Now, in this skillet, 2 thick slices of bacon, just cut into little 1/2-inch squares. They'll cook and get crispy. Cooking grits is really easy. Grits are simply dried corn or hominy, a type of corn treated with an alkali and coarsely ground. This actually is a rather fine coarseness, and this is white corn. White corn and yellow corn have negligible differences in sweetness and nutritional content, but white is generally favored in the South. When cooking grits, make sure your water is really boiling and use a whisk. Pour the grits in slowly, gradually, and keep stirring so that you don't have any lumps. So 1 cup of grits to 4 cups of boiling water. And keep an eye on the heat. If the pot gets too hot, the grits will burn, and that is not what we want. Now just sprinkle this in and stir. I have watched lots of people make grits, and it's very easy to do. Grits like this will take about 5 minutes. Gradually thickens. Now you can use crumbled bacon, and crumbled bacon is thin slices of bacon cooked, and then you can crumble those. But if the bacon is thickly sliced like this bacon, it's a little hard to crumble it. And don't buy pre-cooked bacon bits. There is no reason to do that. Fresh grits will last several months in your pantry if you keep them in the freezer in a tightly sealed bag. I keep them actually in quart plastic containers. To the grits, you're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter, 2 generous tablespoons. And then to make these cheesy grits, add 1.5 cups of grated cheddar. Now, as you add the cheddar, use a wooden spoon, not the whisk, because the whisk will get all stuck. And stir this. It'll melt right into those grits, making them very, very cheesy. Now, I had added no salt, no pepper, so right now I'm going to add a goodly sprinkling of salt and a smaller sprinkling of pepper. There's the tomatoes. They've just gotten a little bit of color around the edge. Those are going to go on top of the grits. And the grits with the cheese and the butter can sit for a little while. If you want to keep it longer than half an hour or so, I would put that in a bain-marie of hot water so that they will stay warm. So here is our bacon. Just drain it on a piece of paper towel, a brown paper bag. And now it's time to fill buttered ramekins. Butter because you don't want the grits to stick. And you also add a little bit more flavor to the grits. Okay, I think those are nicely buttered. And spoon in your grits. They look good. Now grits like this can be served for breakfast. You could put a little pile of grits on a plate and put a fried egg on top and a piece of country ham. That'd be good. Or you can make it a little fancier, as I'm doing, in a ramekin, and this can be served not only for breakfast, but also for lunch. I really got to know a little bit more about grits when I visited my friend Sally down in Tennessee, and she took me to several wonderful stone mills that ground their own grits. It was just amazing to see corn being transformed from the kernel into a grain like this. So just clean up the edges a little bit and put your sliced tomatoes right on top. One has to be vegetarian. Actually, I'll make 2 vegetarian, and the rest can have a sprinkling of this delicious smoky bacon. These look really good. Then grate a little bit more cheese. This is the white cheddar. And sprinkle on top of the tomatoes. Just a half a cup or so. And these will go back under the broiler for approximately 2 minutes. Watch them carefully. This is oven-proof ware, the dishes themselves, but you don't want anything to happen to them under a hot broiler. I think these look good. And just a little bit of pepper. I love pepper. Cheddar's salty enough so you don't have to add any more salt. So, under the broiler for 2 minutes. I hope you'll try this recipe. They're ready. Bubbling, very hot. Oh my gosh, these look great. Spectacular. Now let them cool a little bit before you try to move them. But these are ready to eat in the next 5 minutes. Join me, please, on the next episode of Cooking School. We look forward to seeing you. Add 1 tablespoon of olive oil to 2 cups cooked millet, a 1/4 cup grated zucchini, and 1 medium carrot. Stir in minced garlic and shallot and chopped thyme and parsley. Add 1 large egg and mix to combine. Season with coarse salt and pepper. Scoop 1/3 of a cup onto a baking sheet and flatten to form a burger. Cook the burgers until they're golden and serve topped with lettuce, tomato, and yogurt.